Colonel, thanks very much for joining us. In one of our emails over the weekend, you spoke to me about the Ukrainian loss ratio in the conflagration between Ukraine and Russia. Can you explain what is meant by that and how badly the Ukrainians are suffering compared to their Russian adversaries?
Sure, absolutely. We reckon that we can confirm 122,000 Ukrainian dead through various open sources, newspapers, obituaries, people on the ground counting. However, we've also managed to discover that there are at least 35,000 missing in action, presumed dead. So if you add those two sums together, you come up with roughly 157,000 dead. And that's about right. If you add to that another 300 plus thousand casualties, you have a good picture of what effectively has been the total destruction of the Ukrainian army that they began the war with, and an attempt to build back with reserves and untrained recruits. Now, on the Russian side, we can account for somewhere between 16 and 20,000 dead, and perhaps 50,000 wounded. When you run the calculus, that's about one Ukrainian killed for every one Russian killed. That's a losing proposition in a war. Excuse me, one Russian killed for every 8 Ukrainians killed.
Right.
And that is a losing proposition.
8 times as many Ukrainian soldiers dead as Russian soldiers dead.
Yes.
Not disputed, factually acquired from open sources. Fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. Now, bear in mind, the Ukrainians have never told the truth about their deteriorating situation. So you're not going to get the Ukrainian government under any circumstances to admit to that. On the other hand, they'll lie to you prolifically about all the Russian troops that they theoretically killed or wounded. But these figures are pretty good. They're from people on the ground, people in international organizations, people looking at the situation on the ground through satellites, a combination of all those sources, reading papers, reading reports, and so forth. And I think it's a good snapshot of where we are right now. Everyone goes back to the beginning in February of this year, when Russia went in with a very different set of assumptions that led to, in my judgment, a mistake. They went in thinking that they were going to reach some sort of negotiated settlement. They wanted to use a small force, minimize damage. What happened is that people walked away from that experience saying, well, the Russians are obviously incompetent. They're weak. They don't know what they're doing. This is not true, but that's what we thought. And as you know, historically, Washington always emotes. It doesn't think. And Washington was so enamored of the idea that the Russians were weak and incompetently led that they decided to pile on. And they've been piling on ever since. Ultimately, the outcome, though, for Ukraine is that Ukraine has long ago breached the limits of its capabilities. Russia is only now peaking. And the consequence is that they're staring annihilation in the face.
What will be the response or significance militarily, if any, of the introduction of a handful of German and French tanks into the Ukraine military? When General Zaluzhny was interviewed by The Economist, you remember this because you commented on it.
Yeah.
And he said, I need 500 tanks. You said, well, what he needs and wants is another army.
Yeah, precisely. And he can't get that. It's one thing to get new equipment. It's another to get several different types of equipment. And it's another to find people who are adequately trained and familiar with the equipment to use and employ it effectively. That's the big problem. They've released, my last look at the numbers was about 40 to 50 Bradleys were released from our pre-position sets in Europe.
Or what is a Bradley, Colonel?
It's an infantry fighting vehicle. Its main armament consists of a 25 millimeter automatic cannon on top with a 7.62 machine gun, coaxially mounted, plus a tow missile launcher. And it can normally carry 3-man crew and you could push as many as 6 to 7, even 8 people in the back if you want to. But it's really designed for 6 in the back and 3 on board as the crew.
Can it be characterized as a tank?
No, it's not. It's just an infantry fighting vehicle. It's designed to move infantry to the battlefield and give them fire support. It's a good system. It's not revolutionary, but it's a good system. It has flaws like every armored fighting vehicle system has. But the point is, this is a brand new set of equipment for which the Ukrainians have no infrastructure logistically to support. And it's a system they don't know. And quite frankly, it's complex. It takes a long time to learn how to maintain a 20 millimeter or 25 millimeter automatic cannon with perhaps 1,000 moving parts. This is not something you just hand to somebody and say, go for it. And the same thing's true with the TOW missiles. So even though these are arriving now, their ability to have much impact is limited. And hopefully, if they do use these for maximum effect, they will keep them together. The worst thing you can do is parcel these things out across the front where they won't have expertise or logistical support of any kind.
Do we know?